Oh wait, is that one of the, what you call it, anchors? I don't know. I don't watch CNN, but it looks like an anchor.
And whenever you're ready, Mr. Friedman.
Good morning, Mr. Marquard.
Morning, Mr. Friedman.
Sir, you've heard the term, you've heard CNN called fake news before, have you not?
I've heard that said.
Do you agree with that characterization?
No, I don't.
Is it a journalist's job to report the truth or to entertain?
Very much to tell the truth.
And do you consider yourself to be an entertainer?
No, I don't.
Is CNN in the business of theater?
No.
Do you believe parts of the segment are theater, sir?
No, I don't.
You have won an Emmy before, Mr. Marquard, have you not?
I have, yes.
Several?
I have a couple.
But for journalism, not theater.
That's correct, for journalism.
So the story in this case, it was not about corporate evacuations, was it?
No, it was not. It was about regular people, many of whom were being hunted by the Taliban, or their family members were being hunted by the Taliban. To use Mr. Young's words, many of them were on what might be called a kill list, and it was about their efforts to get out of the country, get out of very dangerous situations.
So it wasn't about companies hiring private contractors like Mr. Young to get their employees out of Afghanistan, right?
That's not what the story was, no.
And in fact, you didn't even want to know what Bloomberg and Audible were doing to get their corporate employees out, right?
The story was not about any corporations, including Bloomberg and Audible. It was about regular people. But given that we had heard that Mr. Young had supposedly worked with these companies, I did reach out to Bloomberg just to sort of get a fuller sense of what his activities had been.
But my question is slightly different. It's what you wanted. And is it a true statement that you did not want to know what Audible and Bloomberg were doing to get their corporate employees out?
The story was not about Bloomberg or Audible, correct?
So you didn't want to know what they were doing to get their corporate employees out?
I wouldn't say that, because I did reach out to Bloomberg, in fact, to understand a bit better what they had been doing in terms of their relationship with Mr. Young. But the story was not about corporate evacuations. So it was
That's interesting. I don't know, Kiwi Green. How does he know what Young testified to? Maybe he was allowed to, because there's really no objections here. And yeah.
It was not about those two corporations. It was about regular people.
So why did you put Mr. Young in there then?
I recall sitting for a deposition in this case in September of 2015.
I recall sitting for deposition. I'll believe you that date is correct.
Sat for a deposition.
I did.
And during that deposition, you swore to tell the truth?
I did.
I'm going to grab a copy of that for you. Yeah. All right.
You may.
It's okay. I'll fix it. Your Honor, I'm going to page 206. I'll find you the line because I've got. Lines 12 through 14.
It gets in the middle of an answer.
Why don't you read the question and the
Oh, I will.
entirety of the answer that goes to 25?
Sure. Mr. Marquard, at that deposition, do you recall I asked you the following questions? You gave the following answers. Question. After all the time you spent in war zones, Mr. Marquard, you didn't see a legitimate reason why Bloomberg, Audible, and Mr. Young didn't want to disclose the details of their evacuation process. Answer. I not once asked for the details in the evacuation process. I didn't want to know what Audible and Bloomberg were doing to get their corporate employees out. What I was reporting on was the market for ordinary Afghans to try to get out of the country and what it would entail, which included your client telling some of them that it would cost $14,500, telling them included that they would need to find sponsors. And when they told him that they didn't have sponsors on several occasions, he simply dropped them. Do you recall that question and answer, Mr. Marquard?
Not precisely, but I see it there on the page.
So you didn't want to know what Audible and Bloomberg were doing to get their corporate employees out, right?
The story was not about Audible and Bloomberg, but what I wanted to know, and I reached out to two separate people within the Bloomberg ecosystem, if you will. As you know, it's both a media company and, when it comes to Mayor Bloomberg, a political organization, to try to get a sense of what they had been doing with Mr. Young, who claimed to have worked with these companies. But at no point was this story about corporate evacuations or about these corporations, which is what I'm saying here.
I understand, Mr. Marquard, but I'm focusing on what you wanted to know. And are you changing your testimony from your deposition?
No, I'm not, sir.
So you didn't want to know what Bloomberg and Audible were doing to get their corporate employees out, correct?
I think we're talking past each other a little bit. I didn't want to know what they themselves were doing because my story was about normal people. And because Mr. Young had claimed to work with Bloomberg, I wanted to hear from Bloomberg whether Mr. Young had been successful at getting the people that they wanted out. That was the answer that I was trying to get to. So I wasn't able to answer that question. The people who I reached.
Of course, Bloomberg and Audible and so forth, because they don't want to tell a reporter what and how they are trying to get their people out, because you would tell people all over the world, including the Talibans, hey, Bloomberg and Audible is doing this, this, and this to get the people out. Nobody wants to talk to a reporter because that would jeopardize lives. But apparently he knew, or at least was told. So here again, are we into what are the prongs of defamation? Knowing it's false or with a disregard to the truth. And clearly, he as well disregarded the truth. Textbook defamation, in my opinion.
Out to Bloomberg, we're not able to answer anything about Mr. Young's activities. But again, this was not about those corporations. And so the reporting that I was doing, the research that I was doing into Mr. Young and others did not have to do with these corporations.
Yeah, it's just yes or no question. Did you want to know what Bloomberg and Audible were doing to get their corporate employees out?
I'm not sure it is a yes or no answer, sir.
Okay.
All I'm saying is they were not the part of the piece. The corporate evacuations aspect was not something.
If they weren't part of the piece, then Mr. Young isn't a part of the piece, and you still put Mr. Young in the piece. You can't have it both ways. But you did anyway. Try to have it both ways.
Something that I was doing. And so my focus here was understanding the whole evacuations operation, and when it came to them, how Mr. Young was a part of that.
So your story was about ordinary Afghans, not corporate evacuations, fair?
That's correct.
And your story was about individuals, right?
Yes, it was.
Not corporations.
That's correct.
It's fair to say that your goal in reporting is to have your story broadcast as widely as possible?
Certainly, yes, it is.
You want it disseminated as widely as possible?
That's correct.
In fact, you'd hope this story would have gone on as many programs as possible.
Absolutely. It was a story that I thought was well reported, well researched, and that's always the hope, is that CNN will distribute it as widely as possible, both on television and online.
If you had your choice, sir, it would have run every single hour.
I would like it to be as disseminated as much as possible. It would be very flattering if the network thought that it was worth running every single hour. I wouldn't have opposed that, but I would have been very surprised if they did something like that.
Mr. Marquard, you recall sitting for deposition in this case?
Yes, twice.
And in September of 2023, take my word for it?
I do take your word for it.
At that deposition, you swore to tell the truth?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to page 111, lines 2 through 16, and specifically lines 11 through 12.
Sorry, which page again?
Page 111, sir.
Okay.
I don't think it's inconsistent. Or you just testified.
Yeah. I mean, is it inconsistent?
I think so. Here he said if I had my choice, would have run every
Yeah,
single
yeah.
out. Sorry, Your Honor, I don't think he gave the answer he gave in his deposition testimony right now.
Ask another one before.
Okay. Sir, if you had your choice, would it have run every single hour?
Yes, it would.
Thank you. You wanted the story to be seen by as many viewers and readers as possible, didn't you?
As we all do with every story we do, yes.
It's fair to say, sir, that you wanted this to be a big story.
Yes.
People love hearing about a good scandal news, don't they?
Sure, some do.
And isn't it true that you were chasing scandal in the story, so it went big?
No, that's not true.
Jill Kornetsky initially pitched you the story. Is that fair?
Jill Kornetsky was the first person to bring Mr. Young to my attention. She didn't pitch me the story.
So, Corey, can we put up plaintiff's exhibit 78, Your Honor, it's in evidence, and let's go to page 4, bottom of page 4, top of page 5. This is your first message. This is the message from Ms. Kornetsky that brought the story to your attention, your words, right?
Yes.
And in it, she tells you about an American mercenary charging people $13,000 to $18,000 and just dumping them in Islamabad, right?
That's correct.
And your response to her message to you is, that sounds extremely interesting, correct?
Yes.
That was the pitch. Oh, wow. That is false. Wow. Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. Sir, you thought it would be good journalism to expose the scams of evacuation from Afghanistan, correct?
We didn't do a story about scams from Afghanistan. The story that we did was about people who were being hunted by the Taliban, who were in some cases cowering in fear in their homes, the Taliban breaking through their doors. One man who we spoke with in the piece wasn't able to take his children to school because he had worked with the Americans and the Taliban was coming after him. And
We are on objection, narrative response, and not responsive.
Overruled. Oh, I'm finished. You finish the answer.
all this to say that in the weeks following the collapse of the American-supported government, there was a lot of chaos, and there were a lot of stories that I was doing about evacuations from Afghanistan. This was the latest in a series. This was, I believe, the sixth in a series of stories that I did about people getting out of Afghanistan, people who had worked with American forces, American diplomats, American companies. And so the focus was very much on these Afghans who had connections to the U.S. I cover American foreign policy, who were desperately trying to save their lives and save their families' lives, and try to get out of the country. That was the story that I was doing in this case.
Yeah, but it's not the question asked, which was, you also thought it would be good journalism to expose the scams of evacuations from Afghanistan, correct?
If there were scams going on, which I never discovered, that could be a story that could be done at some point. That's not the story that we did. What we did was a story about the very high prices that these regular people who were being hunted, whose families were being hunted, what they were facing to get out of Afghanistan. That was the story that we were focusing on.
Again, you knew by the time this was aired that Zachary Young never charged any individual Afghans. You knew. And you completely disregarded it. Textbook defamation.
That was the story that we wanted to highlight in this reporting.
So when you began the news gathering process, it's fair to say you desired on October 29th, you wanted to expose the scams of evacuations from Afghanistan. Is that fair?
I was allowing for the possibility, given the very high prices that I had seen in all the correspondence between Mr. Young and others, and the many people I'd spoken to, these extraordinarily high prices, I was allowing for the possibility that some of these were scams. And that was something that I was going to explore as I spoke to people to figure out whether they were handing over money or being asked to pay money and not actually getting out of the country. That's not the story that we ended up doing. And this is often what happens in the reporting process is you start with an idea, something you think that might be happening, and then you don't find the evidence for that. And that's not the story that you end up doing. And that's not what we did. But early on in the reporting process, I was allowing for the possibility that maybe there were scams out there. But at the end of the reporting, the pieces that you see at the end, the TV piece, the article, we don't talk about scams. We just talk about the very, very high prices that these people were facing to try to save their lives.
Sir, do you remember sitting for a deposition in this case?
I beg your pardon?
Remember sitting for a deposition in this case?
Yes, I do.
This time in January of 2024.
Again, I'll take your word for it.
At that deposition, you swore to tell the truth?
I did.
And Your Honor, I'm going to page 57, lines 12 through 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heather. That's not how
So
it
the
was
second
reported.
Again, I don't think it's inconsistent.
To the extent you're overruling, I'll overrule the objection.
Sir, at that deposition, I asked you the following questions. You gave the following answer. Question. So when you began the news gathering process, it's fair to say you desired on 10/29 on
I
October
apologize, Mr. Freeman. I was looking at page 57. Which page are you referring to?
57. You might, when you go to the second deposition,
My apologies.
let me know when you get there.
I'm here.
All right. So I asked you this question. So when you began the news gathering process, it's fair to say you desired on October 29th of 2021, you wanted to expose the scams of evacuations from Afghanistan. Is that fair? Answer, I think it would be good journalism to expose that kind of thing. That was something that I was looking for. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Sir, you were trying to expose scammers and deceptions, were you not?
I was looking into the possibility that was happening. That was certainly something that I explored. In fact, I got a lot of documents from a source of mine that indicated that there were scams going on. And in fact, I spoke with my editors about doing a piece later on after we published this piece about actual scams, people who would hand over money and actually not get out of the country. But this was not something that we did in this story. But at the beginning of a process, when you pitch a story idea, you are basically putting out there what you think you might discover or what might actually end up being reported on. And that wasn't what we did. And this is a very common thing where you start with an idea, and then as you do your research and as you talk to people, you realize what you can and cannot report. And at the end of the day, we didn't do a story about scams.
So at that point in time, you were trying to expose the scammers, right?
At that point in time, that was one thing that I planned on looking into, yes.
And you were certainly looking to expose and highlight scams. Is that fair?
If you look at the original pitch to my editors, I very clearly talk about the very high prices that these desperate Afghans were facing to get out of the country. That was always the main thrust, the main thing that I was going to be looking into in this story was how people who certainly cannot afford $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 were being asked to either pay that money or come up with that money themselves somehow. That was always the main story from October 29th when I pitched it through till November 11th when it was actually published.
So it's unclear to me if we agree that you were looking for scams and deception.
I was looking for the possibility that was out there, but we didn't end up using that in the piece. And that's very common. It's a general evolution of how pieces come together. You start with an idea, maybe it ends up differently than how you started. It was something I was looking into.
So you were looking for scams and deception,
among other things. But again, the main gist of the story was always going to be these regular people who were desperately trying to get out, and what they were being told by people like Mr. Young that it would cost them to get out of the country.
The gist of the story was bad actors preying on desperate Afghans, right?
No, the gist of the story was the very, very high prices that these people were facing to get out of the country. I didn't know whether people like Mr. Young could actually deliver on their promises. We quote an activist, an expert in the story, who says that there are no guarantees. This is something we made clear. It's obviously a very, very dangerous place that was a war zone for 20 years. There are Taliban checkpoints all over the place, people being pulled from those checkpoints, arrested, possibly executed. This was a very, very dangerous time and area. And so what we were doing was speaking with people who were trying to get out of those situations. And we asked Mr. Young repeatedly whether there were examples that he could point us to of people who he had gotten out of the country. And that's why I reached out to Bloomberg, to your earlier point.
We'll get to who you reached out for Bloomberg in a minute, Mr. Marquard, but I want to stay for the moment on what you were looking for, okay?
Okay.
So we've agreed on scams and deceptions. I'd like to see what else, okay?
Sure.
A few days later, you reached back out to Jill Kornetsky. Do you recall that?
Yes, I did have an ongoing conversation with her.
Corey, can we put up Exhibit 78 at page 7, please? And now you tell Ms. Kornetsky that you'd spoken with a number of people who confirm this exploitation market is growing. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
So we've got scams, deception, and exploitation, right?
Where are you getting deception?
Oh, you just a moment ago agreed that you were looking for scams and deception, and now you're looking at exploitation, right?
I was looking into all these different things, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Corey. You can take that down. And then you had a discussion with Ms. Kornetsky about this alleged black market in Afghanistan, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got exploitation, scams, deception, and black markets, right?
Sorry, where are you getting black market?
You just said that you had a call with Ms. Kornetsky about black markets, right?
I don't believe we talked about black markets with Ms. Kornetsky.
Maybe I could refresh your recollection then. Do you have your deposition in front of you?
I do.
Why don't you go to page 3? Do you think it would help refresh your recollection if you looked at your sworn testimony?
Probably.
So why don't you turn to page 351, lines 6 through 18. Let me know if that helps.
This is the first one.
Volume 1.
What's the one?
Line 6 through 18. Thank you.
Oh, well. They brought the receipts. This is why you depose people.
Okay.
Recollection refreshed? You talked to her about the black market, right?
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
Okay, so scams, deception, black market and exploitation, right?
These are all themes. These are all things that I was looking into. Yeah.
And you can connect
Court, could you put up exhibit
nothing
81?
to Mr.
Let's go to
Young.
page 1.
And you still
Now,
made him a part of
Around
the
that same
segment.
time, you sent a formal and an informal pitch to your bosses at CNN, right?
Yes.
And this is one of those emails, and you entitled it Afghanistan Evacuation Price Gouging, right?
Yes.
And you asked your folks, is anybody digging into this thing? It seems worth chasing, right?
Yes.
So price gouging can be a crime, Mr. Marquard, can it not?
In this country, it can. Yes.
So we've got exploitation, scams, deception, black market, and price gouging, right?
These were all things that I was allowing could happen and was looking into.
Court, can you put up exhibit 88? 2 days later, you submit a formal pitch to the bosses at CNN. This is October 28th. And now you entitle it Extortion of Desperate Afghans, right?
Correct.
Extortion can be a crime also, Mr. Marquard, can it not?
I'll take your word for it as a lawyer.
Oh, don't take my word for it. I'm going to your deposition. Do you recall seeing your deposition?
I do.
And at that deposition, did you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
And I'm going to volume 2, page 136, lines 3 through 4.
Oh, they have all the receipts. So,
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, it's volume 2.
so he pitched it on October 29th, formally. Then they had to get an approval. So around October 30, is it 31 days in October? Yeah. So more or less from having nothing to airing the segment, 10 days? 10 days. For me, that is extraordinary short amount of time for a fact-checked segment. Fact-checked anything. But then again, if they had, this wouldn't have been aired.
Yes.
Page 136, lines 3 through 4.
Let me know when you're there. Volume 2, page 36, line 3 through 4.
136.
136. Apologies.
Your Honor, may I proceed? At that deposition, I asked you the following.
You there? I'm on the page, yes, sir.
At that deposition, I asked you the following questions. You gave the following answers. Question: is extortion a crime? Answer: it can be. Let's take your word for it, Mr. Marquard. Okay.
I see that.
So exploitation, scams, deceptions, black market, price gouging, and now extortion, Mr. Marquard. Correct? Sir?
Could I have a moment?
Oh, sure.
He's trying to remind himself, oh crap, what did I actually say?
These are all things, as you can see in earlier testimony, that I stand by, that we were allowing for the possibility of. At the beginning of a reporting process, you're looking into all kinds of.
No question pending, sir.
I beg your pardon?
There's no question pending, sir.
Okay.
Now, at the end of that pitch,
Yes.
you say that you're going to be looking to examine to what extent this is extortion versus fraud. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
Fraud is a crime, sir, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So you're looking for exploitation, scams, deception, black market, price gouging, extortion, and fraud. Got that right?
What you're describing, sir, is
I get that right?
reporting. That's correct, yes.
Is that scandalous enough for you, Mr. Marquard?
These are things that I was possibly looking into, and was allowing could happen. When at the beginning of a reporting process, at the beginning of my research, I don't know what is actually happening. All I know at this time, having spoken to Ms. Kornetsky and other people, is that there were regular people who were desperate to get out of the country, who were facing extraordinary amounts of money. So I didn't know extraordinary costs to get out of the country. I didn't know whether that was a scam. I didn't know whether these people were being deceived. I didn't know whether there was fraud or extortion. I was allowing for all of these things. And at the end of the day, we didn't do a piece on television. We didn't write an article that said anything about anything illegal. Nowhere in any of the reporting did it talk about Mr. Young profiting off of these desperate Afghans, though we now know he did. So the reporting process is a process. And it started on October 29th, essentially. It started before that with my conversations. The formal pitch goes in on October 29th. About 2 weeks later, after I put together everything that I've gathered, the article, the TV piece were put together, and nowhere in there did we talk about Mr. Young doing anything illegal. Nowhere in there did we talk about him illegally.
Oh, it's the Amber Heard defense. We didn't say his name. I didn't say explicitly in the article that what da. They're doing the Amber Heard defense. Well, in those 30 seconds he was there, we didn't actually say that he did all of these things. No, but defamation by implication. If you run, what was it, 3 minutes of Afghans being human trafficked, then you put his face there for 30 seconds and talk about him. Then after those 30 seconds, you play another minute of Afghans getting human trafficked. The inference is there. Wow.
Profiting. We didn't talk about a scam. We didn't talk about a fraud. We didn't talk about extortion. These were all things that I was looking into. I didn't find them, and then I didn't report them. I reported the facts. I reported what I found. Everything in there was factual, accurate, and I believe fair.
You understand this jury is being asked to determine what your reporting said, right, Mr. Marquad?
I do.
Sir, every good scandal needs a bad guy, does it not?
I don't work in scandals, sir. I don't understand the question.
Take my word for that one?
Sure.
Okay. You knew early on that part of the story was going to be to try to expose the activities of Mr. Young, did you not?
The story was always about regular Afghans trying to get out of the country who couldn't because they couldn't find ways, because the Taliban was coming after them, because they couldn't afford these prices that Mr. Young and others were demanding of them. That was always.
And he's saying it again. Doesn't he know the basics of Mr. Young's contract work? He never asked individual Afghans to pay for anything. This is so bad for CNN, in my opinion.
What the story was from the very beginning. In fact, the message that you just showed from Ms. Kornetsky, even though she was the one who revealed to me what Mr. Young was doing, you can see in my response to her that I talk about the market. And that was always the story. If there's one consistent through line from the very beginning to the very end, it was not all those words that you've been mentioning, but it was this market and the fact that we were always talking about what the regular people were facing and their desperation.
I believe you, Auto Doctor.
I'm trying to get this right. Is it a true statement that you knew early on that part of it was going to be to try to expose the activities of Mr. Young?
Early on, I thought there was a good chance that Mr. Young would be part of this story.
So yes.
And highlighting what he was doing. Part of it. I got into this story because I was made aware of what Mr. Young was doing. So I thought there was a good possibility that he would be part of the story.
So you began asking people about him, did you not?
Oh. So the center, what got him in, my interpretation here, tell me if I'm wrong, but the only reason they did this entire segment was because they thought Mr. Young did something illegal, was getting Afghans to, but that wasn't the case. So they built the before and after just to have Mr. Young there. Oh, wow.
I did.
Corey, can you go up to Exhibit 63, which is in evidence, please? Now, this is a conversation between yourself and a contact named Sahar. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And on October 26 at 14:21, you reach out and say, have you heard the name Zachary Young, right?
Yes.
Now, a moment ago, you told me the reporting started on October 29th. This is 26, right?
Well, it was October 17th when Jill Kornetsky talked about Mr. Young for the first time. So I did some preliminary reporting. And then when I got to what I thought was enough to make the pitch to my bosses, when I collected enough information to make that very early pitch, that's when the pitch went in. I think it was a day or two later. We have to check when it was actually officially greenlit. And then
November
finish the
1st.
process over the next 11 or so days, let's say.
So you asked Sahar, have you heard of Zachary Young, right?
Yes,
He says no.
correct.
Strike one, right?
No, what do you mean?
Oh, you were searching for information on Zachary Young, right?
Yes,
And Sahar told you he had no information on Zachary Young, right?
this person did not. That's correct.
So strike one. You missed him.
I wasn't going after him. I never was going after him. And I don't know if
The only reason you started with checking this out was because Zachary Young.
in the reporting process, this was the first person I reached out to. This person, among many others, had not had contact with Mr. Young. And that's okay, because the story was about the market that we were doing, about what these people were facing. It was not about Mr. Young.
The next day, sir, you started a conversation with Mr. Callahan. Do you recall that? A Slack conversation.
Yes,
And he is your manager, right?
he is, yes.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 82? In the Slack conversation with Mr. Callahan on October 27th, you tell him that you are continuing to dig on the pitch I sent last night, right?
Yes,
And he responds to you, it's a good one, right?
yes,
And then later that evening, he instructs you, can you find more info on this Young guy first? Do you see that?
yes,
So you continue to try to find information on Young per the instruction of your manager, right?
I was always going to be digging into what Mr. Young was doing, and Mr. Callahan was suggesting I do that. Yeah,
Thank you, Corey. You eventually contacted somebody called Hazami Barmada. Do you recall that name?
I do. Yeah,
And she's an outspoken activist, fair?
she's someone who was working on Afghan evacuations at the time. I would call her an expert activist type. Yes,
You had a conversation with her about evacuations from Afghanistan, correct?
I did. Yeah.
You asked her about Mr. Young, correct?
I don't recall if I asked her directly about Mr. Young. I may have, but I was asking her generally about what was going on, since I knew she knew the story very well, and she confirmed what I had been understanding, that this market of essentially people taking advantage of these desperate Afghans was indeed growing. That was one of the first things she confirmed.
And you recorded that call with her, did you not?
I did.
I'm going to play some of the audio from that recording, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, okay?
Very good.
That audio file is already in evidence, Mr. Marquard, as Exhibit 272. So, Corey, I'm going to ask you to play from 8:34 to 9:35.
This is a classic. Oh, wait, there's more. Ah.
So, who are the biggest offenders of this exploitation?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
You can answer off the record, because I'm just trying to come up with examples, of course.
I haven't been as involved. I have heard of Raven numerous times, and I say this off the record. I've heard of Raven come up numerous times by folks that have reached out to me to ask me about them, and they, from what I have heard, it's around the $20,000 price point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you heard of this guy, Zachary Young?
Raven was also involved in Operation Flyaway, where there.
Oh, you absolute twat. She's telling you an actual name of a human trafficker. But you are more interested in, fuck Raven. Tell me about Zachary Young. Oh, you ass.
There was no guarantee that they could actually get their flights out, yet they were charging folks to get them out indirectly.
Right. Have you heard of this guy, Zachary Young?
I have not heard of Zachary Young directly. I've also tried to not be as involved. I know that, like, for example, Dunkirk and several of these other operations were also doing kind of a pay-to-play model,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't, I have not been following that as closely, to be very frank with you.
She had never heard of Zachary Young, correct?
She had not.
But she had told you about Raven
Yes.
and Dunkirk.
Yeah, she mentioned Dunkirk, yeah.
Strike two, sir, right?
That's not how I was looking at it at all.
Are you serious? You are so tunnel visioned into Zachary Young, you didn't even pay attention to her giving you names of actual traffickers.
I wouldn't agree with that characterization.
So Jill Kornexky connects you with some other folks to talk to, doesn't she?
Yes, she did.
And one of them ended up being evacuated by an NGO. I think his name is Mustafa Kuzemi. Do you recall that?
That rings a bell.
And you reached out to Mustafa, right?
I did.
Corey, can you put Exhibit 85 on the screen, please? Now, your conversation with Mustafa, it starts on October 28th at 21:12.
Yes.
And then just 9 minutes into the conversation, you follow up on Mr. Callahan's instructions and ask this Afghan if he'd heard of Zachary Young, right?
I wouldn't say I was following up on Mr. Callahan's instructions. I had already been told about what Mr. Young was doing. I was looking at his activities, and I think you can see at exactly the moment that you were that you mentioned at 2112, I say the reason I reached out was because I'm doing stories on how people are getting out of Afghanistan, and in many of these conversations that hopefully you'll highlight today, you will see that from the get-go, I was asking about the market and about what people were facing.
Yeah, in order to get people to talk about Zachary Young. And apparently, you never found one. That, to me, that tells me that Zachary Young did an amazing good job, because if you are running more or less a covert operation, trying to get Afghans out, and nobody knows your name, that's excellent. That means you're doing a great job. So yeah, this tells me they didn't care about actual perpetrators of human trafficking. They were out to get Zachary Young because he told a journalist she was a bitch.
And Mr. Young was very much a player in this. And the reason that I knew that he was involved in this was not only because of what I had been told, but a colleague of mine had completely separately arrived at hearing about him as well. And so we knew that he was involved. But if you zoom out and you look at the beginnings of these conversations, you can see that very much the story that I was doing is on how people are getting out of Afghanistan.
Have you heard of Zachary Young, right?
Yes.
Answer, no, I have not.
Yes.
Strike three.
Again, that's not how I see it.
Ms. Kornatsky introduced you to other contacts too, did she not?
She did.
Corey, I need a limited production of this one. It's not an edit. So let's display Exhibit 83 to just the witness and counsel, please. Sir, we are looking at a LinkedIn message between yourself, Ms. Kornatsky, and a contact. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it relates to Mr. Young?
Yes, Jill says so in the introduction.
Honor plans offer Exhibit 83 in evidence.
No objection. I say it,
Mr. Hagan, can we now publish it here? So here we have Ms. Kornatsky. Alex is the journalist I told you about. He is interested in talking to you about your conversation with Zachary Young, correct?
Yes.
Not the broader market, right?
No, not the broader market.
You say, thanks, Jill, and then that's the contact's name. It's been redacted to protect your privacy. Please let us know if there's a number I can reach you on, correct?
Correct.
She says, or he says, sure, provides you a number, says my WhatsApp number, right?
That's right.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 86, which is a WhatsApp conversation? You reach out to her.
86, huh?
Is in, Your Honor, yes. Apologies. You reach out to her the next morning, October 29th, and she sends you a screenshot of a private message she had with Mr. Young. Corey, can we bring up page 2? There we go, side by side. So this is the second page of that exhibit, and she sends you this, right?
Yes.
And you see that Mr. Young says hi, and then there's the source's name is redacted and her message is redacted, right?
Yes, this source redacted themselves.
So we don't know what is under the introductory message, do we not? You've never seen under that blue redaction, right?
I have not, no.
And you received it this way, right?
Correct.
You have no idea what she said to him, correct?
Well, I can see the bottom part is what she said to him.
I understand, sir. I'm focusing on the 4:08 a.m. message. You have no idea what it says there, right?
That's correct.
And Mr. Young responds, nice to meet you, right?
Yes, he does.
And then the redacted contact says, well, I saw your recent post on your page about evacuation. Nice to talk to you. It's possible to help. My apologies for being so fast and direct. And Mr. Young's first response to her is, do you have a sponsor able to provide funding? Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Can we scroll down to the next page, Corey? These screenshots came from this contact as well, right?
I believe so, yes.
And she indicates in that second message, it's a little unclear, but essentially no, right? No specific address to provide fund, right?
Can you just give me a moment to read this?
Absolutely.
Yes, I believe she's saying with address that she does not have a sponsor.
And so Mr. Young tells her, listen, we can help, but I think it's supposed to be but. There are costs associated. I'm sorry for that. What we do is very difficult. And then the contact responds a couple of times, but there's no response from Mr. Young. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's consistent with what we saw between Mr. Young and others, that as soon as he found out that these people wouldn't be able to come up with the money, he simply stopped responding to them. He just dropped the conversation when he realized that he wouldn't be doing business with them.
He was doing corporate evacuations?
No, he was reaching out to regular Afghans. He was advertising his services on LinkedIn to a very, very broad community that was well beyond just corporate sponsors. In fact, all of the conversations that I saw Between Mr. Young and others, none of them mentioned corporate sponsors.
That's because you never reached out to Audible, sir, did you?
I didn't. I reached out to Bloomberg.
You didn't reach out to Audible, sir, did you?
I didn't reach out to Audible. It didn't make sense to me why Audible was operating in Afghanistan.
This is confirmation bias textbook. So they cherry-picked the answer. Now, he advertised through his network. Of course, other people might see it, and then desperate Afghans will contact him, and he will tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because you need a corporate sponsor. Holy crap, this is bad for CNN.
Audible, as far as I know, is, that's where I listen to books on tape. Bloomberg is a company that works in media and politics, and I thought that I might be able to learn something from them. But I would just state again that the story was about regular Afghans, some of whom had dealings with Mr. Young, some of whom didn't. The people who he spoke to in the story.
Your Honor, I'm going to re-raise my objection of a narrative and non-responsive answer. I'd like to get us out of here.
I think the original question was you didn't reach out to Audible. I not sustain the objection, so try to respond to the question, especially if it's a specific directed question, not asking for a narrative.
Yes, Your Honor. I did not reach out to Audible.
Or can you take down the pictures that this contact sent, and let's focus on the left side. So you review these pictures, and she then said, you then say to her, what was his response after that, right? You keep going. Correct?
Yes.
And she responds to you, he did not reply more, right?
Correct.
So you learned from this interaction that Mr. Young stopped answering after she said she didn't have a sponsor, correct?
To her and to several others, he would simply end the conversation. He wouldn't try any further to help these people try to get out.
Because they didn't have a corporate sponsor. Oh, this is it. He didn't provide his services for free. This is what these assholes are gunning for. Pissing me off.
It became clear in how terse he was in these conversations that he was ready to drop them as soon as he realized that he couldn't do business with them.
Strike forward.
Exactly. He couldn't do business with these because he's not a human trafficker. He's not in the black market. How do they not see this? This is tunnel vision, cherry picking, everything mentioned. He didn't lie to people. He didn't exploit people. He did a quick review. Is this somebody I can help? Do you have a corporate sponsor? No, I can't help you. Heather Marshall. Let's see if CNN is willing to work for free. Yeah. Alex head doesn't pay itself. I can assure you, he does not cut his own hair.
And I disagree with the characterization of strikes. That's not how I was thinking about it. This was part of ongoing research. I was learning more about the market in general. I was learning more about these people and their plights and their suffering, their desperation. I was learning more about Mr. Young in the process. I was not looking at it as balls and strikes.
Thank you, Corey. You also looked at responses to Mr. Young's public posts, did you not?
I did.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 90, which is in evidence? And here you are reaching out to a contact, and you say, I see that you tried to contact Zachary Young about evacuating from Afghanistan. Did he respond to you? I hear he's charging a lot of money. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
But the source responds to you, this contact responds to you, says, no, at the top. No, unfortunately, he didn't answer my message. You see that?
Yes.
And you say, even though he said right on the top that Young didn't answer my message, you keep pushing. I am trying to find out what Zachary Young told you. Do you see that?
Yes, I'm not sure why I said that, because he said that he didn't answer my message, so that doesn't really...
Mr. Marquad, this gentleman here, or woman, I don't know, is trying to get help from you. Alex, did you help this person for free? I can assure you, after Alex didn't get the answers he searched for, he couldn't care less about this Afghan.
Really makes sense to me.
I think we're all wondering that, Mr. Marquard. So if you go to page 3, Corey. Oh. He responds. He says, he, meaning Zachary Young, didn't want to answer me. I can't message to him, didn't add me. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then you respond at 10:37. It seems very corrupt. Do you see that?
I do.
Can you take that down, Corey?
But the previous line, you can see, do you know anyone who has paid a lot to get out? You can see that the question was about the general market. And this was early enough on in the reporting process when I'm doing the research that I'm allowing for the possibility that this was indeed a scam and that this was corruption.
It seems to me, now, sure, CNN might bring up evidence for themselves, but it seems like every time you reach out to these Afghan people, all you want to hear is about Zachary Young. You ignored the person who gave you actual names just because she didn't know about Zachary Young. Your entire focus. This is getting really, really clear to me, hopefully to the jury, that the entire segment was about getting to Zachary Young. And the rest of it was just fluff. This, Mr. Alex, big-time Emmy winner, anchor journalist, that is you using desperate Afghans just to get a story about Zachary Young.
At the end of the day, that's not what we found. We didn't accuse Mr. Young of corruption or of scamming. And I think that really does highlight quite well that I was looking at the broader subject and not just about Mr. Young.
You were still chasing that scandal.
I was not.
Well, then you take the conversation with the source to WhatsApp. I will represent to you. Your counsel stipulated during the course of discovery it's the same person. Mr. Axelrod, if you'd like to check me on that, you can look at volume 2.
Objection. If this isn't evidence, we can just move on.
Okay, great. Corey, can you put up Exhibit 92? It is,
I
right?
want to get what Mr. Green's talking about.
All right, well, if you want to have a sidebar, you can call for it. I'm not going to.
I guess, were you saying that
Miss,
let's add chap is the same person who was on those last?
correct, and Ms. Schulman stipulated it during the course of discovery to make things easier. I was just trying to help the witness out, Your Honor, that's it. It's in the deposition transcript.
Your Honor, as part of the pretrial process, we could have agreed to stipulations. I don't know what Mr. Green is doing right now, but I don't think it's that important. I think we can just move on.
All right, why don't you ask Ms. Marquad a question
Okay.
pertaining to this chat?
Margaret, do you recognize this WhatsApp as the continuation of the LinkedIn conversation we were just seeing?
I'll take your word for it. It's hard for me to tell with the name blocked out.
Okay, so Your Honor, this is what I was trying to avoid, and so I can, Your Honor, in volume 2, page 51, lines 9 through 14, during the course of Mr. Marquard's deposition, to avoid this issue.
Objection.
Hang on.
I'm not going to describe it.
Page 52.
Yeah,
In volume 1 or 2.
volume 2, sorry. Oh, was it 51? 51, sorry. Volume 2, page 51, lines 9 through 14. Corey, for the court, can you put up the dates of the previous exhibit? From side by side.
Do you want to
We can continue.
agree of what's on the record in the depot? And
It's fine. It's not that important. We can move forward.
I find it important. I'd like the stipulation either through your order or.
can I read what was stipulated here?
That's fine, Your Honor.
All right. Just for the jury's benefit, the individual that's in PX 90, starting at page CNN 000773, whose name is redacted, it was stipulated that that is the same source as the individual in PX 092, which is bait stamp CNN 000776. Okay.
Welcome to the faster clock.
Okay, thank you. Can you take the LinkedIn conversation? Let's go back to WhatsApp. So, sir, this is the same person. You saw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you follow up, let's see, page 1 at 10:43 a.m. And you say, he says to you, or this contact says to you, if you can please help me to evacuate from Afghanistan, help. You see that?
Yes.
And you respond, there is nothing I can do myself except to tell your story and show the world how important it is. Do you see that?
Yes, and this is something that continues to this day. People in Afghanistan reaching out to me, asking if I can get them out of the country. And they look at me as a...
Your Honor, objection, non-responsive, narrative response. I said, do you...
Oh.
Overrule the objection. You can finish your answer.
Thank you, sir. This really speaks to a lot of the conversations that I had back then and continue to have to this day. To this day, there are people in Afghanistan reaching out to me, begging me to help them get out of the country.
Yeah, they do. And you told their story in the narrative of look at this bad American, while he was trying to actually help people get out of Afghanistan. You ruined it. He was going to continue doing that, but you ruined it by putting him in the story, even though this far nobody has heard of him. Or they tried to reach out to him and he said, I can't help you because you do not have a corporate sponsor. And you still chose to ruin this guy's life and career. Jesus Christ.
And you can see this person describing this as Afghanistan hell, because they are being hunted, and there's nothing that I can do personally as a journalist except tell their story. And that's what we were setting out to do from the very beginning, was to tell the stories like that of this gentleman, and to highlight their plight. I do see this.
So you were still chasing that worldwide story, sir?
I was reporting on the story, yes.
Now, this gentleman has twice told you he didn't talk to Mr. Young, but you ask again, sir. Can we go to 11:15 a.m., Corey? You say you only spoke with Zachary Young. You said he didn't answer you. And he responds, yes. Do you see that?
Yes.
Take that. Oh, no. Let's go to, so you confirmed it again. Let's go to 11:19, please. Now, you say, there's evidence I can see of this. Is there evidence I can see of this big business? I'm gathering evidence of this business, of these scams. I want to expose them. Do you see that?
I do.
So still looking for scams to expose on international TV, correct?
You can see very clearly here that what I'm reporting on is the big business. And this was indeed a big business. And people were charging incredible amounts of money that these people could not afford. And I was allowing for the possibility that there were scams involved in that. And
So why did you continue with Mr. Young? If you've seen time and time again, he was never connected to these scams. Instead, you chose to expose Mr. Young, denying him the ability to keep rescuing Afghans who had corporate sponsors. This is...
I still think that there were scams that took place, but that's not what we reported on. We just talked about the high prices that these people were facing.
So you got to these questions after you 3 times asked him about Zachary Young, correct?
I'll take your word for it.
All right. Can you take that down, please, Corey? So he had no information on Mr. Young, correct?
He confirmed that there was a big business, and that was very important to my reporting process, to my understanding of what was going on. Even if people didn't have contact with Mr. Young, I knew that the story was not about Mr. Young. It was about, as this person called it, the big business.
Then why did you put Mr. Young in the segment? Every piece of fact you gathered thus far, shown by the defense, shows that Mr. Young was never a part of this scam, black market, or extorting individual Afghans. Nothing. And you still went on.
So this was yet another conversation that helped in my reporting. But even if he hadn't had contact with Mr. Young, he confirmed that there was a market, that there was business going on here.
No information on Mr. Young, correct?
Not specifically, no, just on a market that he was participating in.
Strike 5.
Not how I was looking at it, sir.
You reached out to more people about Mr. Young, did you not?
Yeah, quite a few.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 91? Here's another LinkedIn message. Here you say, I see you tried to contact Zachary Young about evacuating from Afghanistan. Did he respond to you? I hear he's charging a lot of money. You see that?
I do, yes.
Now, Corey, you then give him your WhatsApp number, and you say, he says to you at 2:11 p.m., I have messaged you in WhatsApp, right?
Yes.
Corey, leave that on the left side, please, and can you bring up Exhibit 96, which is also an evidence on the right side. Now, I don't have the names because they're all been redacted, sir, but if you take a look, the very first message from him, good day, sir, is exactly 1 minute after the LinkedIn conversation. It's 14:12, which is 2:12. So he tells you, I've messaged you in WhatsApp on 2:11, and at 2:12, you receive this message. So I'm assuming it's the same person. Can you confirm that for me?
Yes.
Great. Corey, can you put it down on the left side? Let's focus on the WhatsApp. He says at 2:15, Corey, let's jump to 2:15. He says, yes, I contacted Mr. Zachary Young. He didn't respond to my messages, correct?
Yes.
So strike 6.
No. I was not looking at it as balls and strikes.
You swung and missed 6 times.
That's not correct. And you can see in the continuation of that conversation, there are people outside asking for money and they will make the paperwork. There are people outside asking for money, and that's the story that I was working on. And I ended up using this gentleman in the story, despite the fact that he hadn't had contact with Mr. Young. The reason I found it was because he had reached out to Mr. Young. But this really does speak to the fact that this was a much broader story about the people asking for money from this father who had 2 children and who was, because he was working with Americans, was being hunted by the Taliban. That was the story that I was working on.
Corey, can you highlight people outside asking for money that will make like paperwork, like recommendation letters and HR records? Sir,
Yes.
your story did not include reporting on people making fake paperwork and HR letters, did it?
No, I thought about doing a story later on. I saw from sources what looked like fake paperwork and that kind of thing, but this story was not about scams. It was just about the very high prices that people were facing to get out of the country.
Your story did include Zachary Young, did it not?
It did.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 89? Sir, you reached out to more people about Zachary Young, did you not?
I did.
So here, you write to another contact who commented on one of Mr. Young's posts. And you say, I'm working on a story. I saw your comment on Zachary Young's thread about it costing $14,500. I would be eager to discuss. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then at 10:25, you follow up, you say, I am eager to find out what Young told you. Do you see that?
Yes.
So eager, you said it twice.
I said it twice.
And the source responds to you at 10:29. He says, yeah, I reached out to him. That's exactly what Zachary told me. I reached out to him and told him that I am an Afghan, work with U.S. forces. He told me I should have someone to sponsor me. I told him I don't have that kind of person. Can't I pay the fee of evacuation? He told me the fee per person is $14,500. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
And then you respond. And when you said you couldn't pay, what did he say? And the source told you that Zach said nothing, right?
That's correct. This is part of the pattern of Mr. Young. When he realized that the people couldn't pay, he simply dropped them. And this speaks to the fact that even though he claims that everyone had to have a sponsor, he knew that people couldn't pay that. And when this person said, can't I pay it myself? He didn't respond because he likely knew that that person could not pay it themselves.
Hold that thought. We're going to keep going. Okay, Mr. Marquard?
Sounds good.
At the bottom of page 7, the contact tells you, and now that I checked my conversation with Young, it seems like he blocked me. I can't send him any messages. You see that?
I do, yes.
You asked for screenshots of his conversation with Zachary Young, did you not?
Yes, I was gathering all kinds of information. I thought it would be valuable. It could be valuable for the report.
And then at 11:42, Corey, he says, sir, I've sent you the pics, right?
Yes.
Let's look at the screenshots he emailed you. Corey, can you put on the side, Exhibit 94, page 2, it's an evidence room. So this is the email from him. Now, sir, this jury has already seen this correspondence, so I'm not going to go through the long opening message. We've seen it in Mr. Young's testimony, but there's a long opening message from the Afghan, right?
Very long. It's truly heartbreaking to read it. I mean, this really speaks to what these people were going through. He talks about the Taliban coming to his door to try to find him and his father because of what he was doing. So this speaks exactly to the kind of people that I wanted to highlight in my reporting, how desperate they were to get out of the country. And he says very clearly in the beginning of the message, my family and I are in great
Objection, non-responsive, narrative response. Let's go to page 2, please. So after the long message from the Afghan, Mr. Young says, do you have a sponsor able to pay for evacuation costs, correct?
Yeah, nothing about, I'm so sorry for your situation. His immediate response was, do you have a sponsor? Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Afghan replies, not really, but can't I pay that myself, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Young replies, $14,500 per person, and on the bottom of the screen, what he's telling you, LinkedIn member unable to receive messages, he blocks them, correct?
I don't know when he blocked them, but he's saying $14,500 per person. His answer to that question is not, no, you cannot pay it yourself. You must have a sponsor. He is entertaining the possibility that this person might have the money and therefore could pay himself. And I think this is a good example of Mr. Young entertaining the possibility of taking money from people who in fact did not have sponsors. And then when he realized that that person likely did not have a sponsor or that money, he blocked them. And this is a continuation of a pattern that we saw that once Mr. Young realized that people were not really of use to him, he would cut off communication.
Kind of like when you find out that they have no information on Young, you drop them too, right?
No, that's not true. I used what they told me to inform the rest of my reporting. It confirmed that this market was going on.
Sir, you do not know when that block was enacted, right?
No, I don't. But I do know. I can see here that the conversation ended.
Let's keep going, sir, and maybe we'll find out. Let's go back to the LinkedIn conversation on the left side. You keep pushing, sir. You say, after he gave you the price, that was the end? You see that?
I do.
And the source responds to you at 11:46. Yes. He did not say anything. And after he told me about the price, I was no longer able to message him. You can see it in the end of the picture. You see that?
Yes, it looks like the conversation.
So, sir, the Afghan told you that the block occurred right after he was told about the price, correct?
Okay, I take your word for it, yeah, and his.
Take it down, sir. Thank you. So this source's interaction with Zach, with Mr. Young, is being asked if he had a sponsor. The source saying no, but asking if he can pay for himself. Zach telling him a price he could never afford to pay. You agree with that, right?
I do, and by Mr. Young's own admission, these people couldn't afford that.
And then being blocked, right?
Right.
Strike 7.
Again, that's not how I was looking at it. And what we would later hear from Mr. Young was that his efforts were to align corporate sponsors with people, align sponsors, essentially find the sponsors for these people. But what we're learning here, and what is very clear, is that Mr. Young was putting the pressure on those people who, keep in mind, were running for their lives, who were being hunted by the Taliban, who were being targeted by the Taliban. He was telling them, you need to go out and find that money in order for me to help you. He was not finding the sponsors for those people.
He was just working for corporations.
That's not true. You can see right there, he was engaging with a regular person.
7 people contacted, we just looked at, correct?
I'll take your word for it.
I said strike 7. Did I miscount?
I don't look at it as balls and strikes.
Regardless, it was 7 people, correct?
I will take your word for it. I wasn't counting.
5 had no interaction from Zach.
I'll take your word for it.
2 had been told they needed sponsors and then were blocked or ignored, correct?
Yes.
No evidence of Zach engaging in a scam, correct?
No evidence he engaged in a scam, and that's not at all what we reported in the end. We just reported that he was charging high prices.
No evidence of Mr. Young engaging in deception, correct?
No.
No evidence of him engaging in fraud, correct?
No.
But you kept watching him anyway, isn't that true?
I kept doing my research, and none of those words that you used were ever anywhere in the reporting that we did. These were things that I was considering, and when I found that he was not doing them, I did not say that he did them.
You kept watching him anyway, sir, correct?
What do you mean by watching, sir?
Okay, you tell us. Corey, can you put Exhibit 102 on the screen? This is an evidence, Judge. Let's go to page 1. This is an email from you, Mr. Marquard, on November 1st to Mr. Phillips, Mr. Callahan, Katie Bo-Lillis, and your opening sentence, I think this is the same guy I've been watching, Zachary Young. Do you see that?
Yes. What I mean here is that I'm looking into, that I'm researching.
And sir, you looked at Zachary Young's LinkedIn profile 1,000,000 times, did you not?
I wasn't able to. He never accepted my request.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 112? 112 on the screen. It's an evidence, Judge. Let's go to page 3. These are text messages between yourself and Katie Bo-Lillis. She says, or he has premium. This is LinkedIn premium, right? Yeah. And you can see who is looking at his profile. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you respond, right, probably that. I've looked 1,000,000 times. Do you see that, sir?
I've looked for him 1,000,000 times. I don't recall ever seeing his actual profile.
I see. So you were trying to figure out how it just fortuitously happened that Mr. Young connected with Katie Bo-Lillis on LinkedIn. Isn't that right?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
Yeah, you were here discussing with Katie Bo-Lillis, who's a Williams at the time. She's since married, correct?
Correct.
And so you were talking with Katie Bo-Lillis, and you were trying to figure out how it was that Mr. Young reached out to Katie Bo-Lillis for a connection. And she says he has premium and is maybe looking at to see who is looking at his profile.
I'm not sure if that's what we were discussing there.
All right. So by this point, Corey, think you take that down. You had zeroed in on Zachary Young. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Young was the way that I learned about the story. Mr. Young, I learned quite early on, and thanks to Ms. Lillis, I confirmed was very much a part of this market that we were looking into. And so I think everything that you've been showing for the past few minutes is just evidence of all the research that I was doing into this market and into Mr. Young's role in this market. And I think it demonstrates how thorough we were being in trying to understand everything that was going on.
You had zeroed in on Mr. Young, correct?
Mr. Young, we certainly thought was going to be part of the story, but we were allowing for the possibility that he wouldn't be. But I only learned about this market and what was going on because I had learned about Mr. Young. So
The market, as in the black market, that was put on the segment. Again, in my opinion here, you can form your own opinion if you want, but they, for days and days on end, they tried to connect Zachary Young to illegal business. Not one time were they able to connect Mr. Young to black market, to scam, to fraud, to nothing. Every part of this research they did tells me they had nothing on Mr. Young, and they still put him in the segment. as we heard maybe half an hour ago, somebody gave them names on people in the black market, and CNN ignored it completely. They were given names on people actually charging Afghans money. No follow-up. Well, maybe CNN will show evidence that they tried to find those two people that somebody actually told them about. But no, with all of that, everything I've seen so far tells me they knew, but ignored the simple fact that Mr. Young did nothing illegal. And they still wanted to connect him to this illegal business.
I was doing some research, quite a bit of research about Mr. Young.
Corey, can we get a limited production? This is not yet in evidence of Exhibit 99. And so this is a conversation between you and another contact, correct?
If he,
Yes.
And it relates to
They
the
follow up
Afghanistan
on this raid.
story and Mr. Young, correct?
I don't see Mr. Young referenced in here. At the very top, you can see that I'm talking about the exploitation of people getting out of Afghanistan. This is a conversation about that story.
Honor plaintiffs offer Exhibit 99 to evidence.
No objection. All right, plaintiffs, 99,
Yes, sir.
will be admitted.
So can we publish that to the jury now, please? Corey, can you take us to page 3? And I'm looking at 15, 30, and 55 seconds. Sir, a message from you. Well, there's always room for more good material. We have zeroed in on an American offering outrageous prices. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
You had zeroed in on this American, had you not?
Yeah, we had learned about him, and we were focused on him.
Are you unwilling to own your own words, Mr. Marquard? You had zeroed in on an American offering outrageous prices, correct?
I think it's been very clear from everything you've shown that Mr. Young was certainly a person of great interest to me, and I was trying to figure this out. And this is, mind you, 9 days before the eventual publication of the piece. And so that far out, we don't know what the piece is actually going to look like. Is it going to be a profile of Mr. Young? Is it going to be entirely about him? Is it going to be about the broader subject? But you know, from the very beginning of my process, that I was looking at the entire process, the entire market of which Mr. Young was a part, and I had identified him as a player in that market, and I was focusing on him.
In that speech, you not once admitted to using the words zeroed in on American. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Friedman, I do admit that I use those words.
Thank you, sir. Corey, can you please take that down? Can we agree, sir, that you investigated Zachary Young?
I certainly did, yes.
And despite that investigation, you found no evidence that he had committed a crime, correct?
That's correct. We never, ever reported him doing anything illegal.
And in fact, the court has found, as an established fact, that Zachary Young did not commit a crime or do anything illegal, correct?
We agree on that. He did not do anything illegal as far as we know.
During all of your research and reporting on this case, you never came across a single Afghan that Mr. Young took money from. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. We asked Mr. Young if he would provide that, and he did not. But we only found people who had been in contact with him, but not who had paid him because they likely couldn't afford it.
To be clear, there was no evidence that Mr. Young ever accepted money from an Afghan, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, the court has found as an established fact that Mr. Young did not take any money from an Afghan, correct?
Well, by his own admission, they couldn't afford it.
Correct, sir. The court has found as an established fact that Mr. Young did not take any money from an Afghan?
As far as I know, and we never reported that he took money from an Afghan.
And sir, you have no evidence that Mr. Young took advantage of an Afghan, correct?
I believe he was taking advantage of the general situation and doing business because of the desperation of those Afghans.
You have no evidence that Mr. Young took advantage of an Afghan, correct?
I have no evidence that he took money from an Afghan, and we did not report that. We just said that he was presenting these prices and asking for that amount of money.
Not took money, sir. You have no evidence that Mr. Young took advantage of an Afghan, correct?
I have no evidence that he took money from an Afghan.
Sir, do you recall sitting for deposition in this case?
I do.
And at that deposition, you swore to tell the truth.
I did.
Please open your deposition, volume 2, to page 139, lines 3 through 6.
Which volume, sir?
Volume 2.
I know I'm supposed to be
page
somewhat
139.
neutral, but I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. How?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Be there.
Yes, sir.
What was the line?
Lines 3 through 6.
Correct. Sorry, yes, I see that.
Yep. You may.
Sir, at that deposition, I asked you the following questions. You gave me the following answers. Question, meaning you have no evidence that Mr. Young took advantage of an Afghan. Answer, no. And I never reported that he did.
That's exactly what I will say today. I don't have evidence that he took advantage of an Afghan.
So that's not what you said today. Maybe you want to say it now, and let me ask you again. You have no evidence that Mr. Young took advantage of an Afghan, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. You also do not have any evidence that Mr. Young actually exploited an Afghan, correct?
He was exploiting the situation, but not, I don't have evidence that he exploited an Afghan in particular.
To the contrary, sir, you knew that Zach's MO, Mr. Young's MO, was primarily that if you have a sponsor, good. And if you don't have a sponsor, I'm not engaging further, correct?
I knew that he was putting the responsibility on the Afghans to come up with the money however they could, whether it was with a sponsor. And most of the time he asked for sponsor, and that's what we included in our piece. The quote that we have from Mr. Young in the piece is, "You must have a sponsor." But as we've just seen, he was allowing for the possibility that if someone did not have a sponsor, that they could pay themselves.
Sir, you sat for a deposition in this case?
I did.
And one of them was in January, volume 2 in your book, correct?
Yes.
At that deposition, you swore to tell the truth, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to page 209 of volume 2, lines 7 through 11. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm there.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
That was the testimony you just gave.
I don't know, this answer was exactly, why don't you re-ask the question before using the depo?
So you knew that Mr. Young's MO was if you have a sponsor, good. If you don't have a sponsor, I'm dropping you, correct?
Primarily, that's how he was operating in general. There were exceptions.
Would you agree with me that if someone is not asking Afghans to pay, they're not exploiting them?
I think I would disagree with that.
Sir, do you want to call sitting for deposition in this case?
Yes, sir.
And at that deposition, you swore to tell the truth.
Yes.
Can you turn to page 15, lines 21 through 16, line 4?
Same volume?
If you're in volume, same volume, sir.
15.
Yep. Lines 21 through 16, line 4.
What this one?
1521 through 1604.
Sorry, you're saying page 15, line 21?
Yep.
Okay.
You there?
And then 16
Lines 4.
up to line 4.
So we have a clear record, sir. I'm going to ask you the question again. Would you agree with me that if somebody is not asking an Afghan to pay, they are not exploiting them?
I believe that even if someone is asking someone to find a sponsor, that the responsibility then gets put on that person to find the money. So whether you're saying, pay me the money or find someone else to pay me the money, you're still putting the responsibility on that person who, again, is going through one of the most difficult times of their lives, and they're being told, hey, you've got to come up with that money. So I think he was exploiting the general situation, and that's what created this market that he was operating in.
Your Honor, may I read the question and answer?
I don't think the question's on point. I don't think it's proper impeachment. It's a different question.
But I was asking what his answer. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Sir, at that sworn deposition, I asked you the following questions. You gave me the following answers. Question, would you have considered that amount of money to be exploitive? Answer, I don't think well, they're not asking the Afghans to pay, so they're not exploiting them. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Are you changing your testimony today?
I believe he was exploiting a situation, and not the individuals in particular.
It eventually became clear to you, sir, that Mr. Young's conduct wasn't necessarily about getting people out of Afghanistan, but really about the business he was involved in. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair. The big business, as one of the Afghans said.
You still included Zach. CNN still included Mr. Young in its reporting, correct?
Yes, we did. He was very much a player in that market.
About black markets
Yes.
and about exploiting desperate Afghans.
Yes.
Boom.
Sir, a hit piece is a euphemism for a piece that, for lack of a better description, is looking to take someone down.
That's accurate.
Reputable journalists don't do hit pieces, sir, correct?
No, that's correct.
You did one anyway?
No, I didn't.
Did you not take down the person that Jill Kornetsky brought to your attention?
No, I did not.
Did you not take down the person that you pitched CNN internally about?
The story was not about Mr. Young. It was not a hit piece. I don't do hit pieces, as you say. Good reporters shouldn't. I like to think of myself as that, and I didn't do a hit piece.
Did you not take down the person CNN approved the story about?
I don't know what you mean by that. I wasn't looking to take anyone down. I don't believe I took anyone down, and I don't believe the story was about Mr. Young.
Sir, you took down the person you hated, did you not?
That's not true.
Let's drill down into these a little bit, okay, sir?
Sounds good.
Excuse me. Ms. Kornefsky's reach out is what put in motion the reporting that eventually led to the video and the article, correct?
That's correct.
You knew she was an activist, correct?
Yes.
You knew activists have agendas, correct?
Yes.
Corey, can you put up Exhibit 78, lines 4 through 5? This is her opening message to you. She pitched you about an American mercenary dumping people in Islamabad, correct?
That's correct.
On October 26th, you then ask her if she can talk about Mr. Young today. Do you see that?
Yes.
She connected you to people who might have information on Mr. Young, correct?
That's correct.
Corey, can you go to page 10? On November 2nd, you said, just letting you know we're full steam ahead on this story. Fair to say, sir, you kept her updated on your progress.
Yes, I did.
And then the next line, you said, talking to Afghans and we'll try to approach Young, correct?
Yes.
Fair to say you told her you were still on Young's trail, correct?
No. In an earlier message that you showed, I told her that from the people I spoke with, that I had confirmed that this market that Mr. Young participated in existed. She's obviously using words and terms and information that I did not. I didn't call him a mercenary. I didn't say he was dumping people in Pakistan. But I did let her know that I had confirmed the bigger story. And here I'm telling her that the pitch has been approved by my bosses and that we are full steam ahead.
After the story, can you put up page 11? Sir, after the story ran, you sent her a link to it, correct?
Yes.
And then you sort of apologized to her, saying, likely not as harsh about Young as you hoped. That's where we ended up, correct?
That's not an apology. And what I'm doing here is kind of closing the loop. She had put the idea in my head. This is what I do with a lot of stories. People I spoke with, people who helped me on a story, I'll send them the finished product and let them know what the final story looked like. And here I'm acknowledging the fact that she is an activist. She has an agenda. She certainly had some very harsh thoughts about Mr. Young. You saw that from the beginning, calling him a mercenary, saying he dumps people. But that's not what we do. I did all my research. I spoke to a lot of people. We tried to engage with Mr. Young. We had some engagement with Mr. Young. I'm acknowledging here that she certainly would have liked the story to go farther, but that's not a concern of mine. This is, as I say, this is where we ended up.
Corey, can you display the bottom of page 11 and the top of page 12 for us? After she receives that message from you, she tells you that parasites can be hard to exterminate. Do you see that?
Yes,
And you respond back, yeah.
I see that.
Corey, can you take that down? Ms. Kornefsky wasn't the only person who wanted you to take down Mr. Young. Isn't that correct?
I'm trying to think of others.
You didn't find a single person.
Mr. Young.
Let's see if we can get you there. Corey, can you put up Exhibit 298, please?
Yes.
James Daniels, right?
Yes.
Now, sir, this jury has already seen these posts, and I'd like to try to get us through here, so let's go through it quick, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Beware of a con artist. One Zachary Young, masquerading as a Navy vet. Special ring of hell for people reserved to exploit. Excuse me. Can you scroll down? Ms. Kornefsky, everyone should watch CNN today, devil face. Scroll down. And sir, you saw these posts before you ran your story, did you not?
I don't recall seeing these Jill posts.
Okay, but let's go to the top first. We'll start there. You saw the top post before you ran your story, correct?
Yes, I did.
All right. Now, so we go down again, please, Corey. We've seen Jill Kornefsky. Everyone should watch it. Daniels, I'm wondering when it was going to happen. Go down a little bit, please, Corey. Oh, Navy vet, he's a skis ball, and you are tagged on the post, Alexander Marquard. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
Let's keep going, please. Keep going, Corey. Let's run through it quick. This is a repetition. We've seen this one. Keep going. That's the tag. All right, more people talking about him. Thank you for posting this. My network, be aware. Keep going down, Corey, please. Keep going. Profiteering, can't even get it done. Sadly common. An assistant attorney general with a mad face. Let's keep going down, Corey. Expose them. Let's keep going down. Keep going, Corey. This is the first post. I'll personally dance on the Zachary Young scumbag's face. He's finally taken down. Zachary lied as a scammer. Okay? Sir. Corey, can you put up Plaintiff's Exhibit 110, which was just admitted?
It seems like all the replies was about Zachary Young. almost nothing was about the Afghans, which now Alex, what's his face, claims the story was about. That tells me story was never about exploited Afghans. It was trying to ruin Zachary Young. And by doing that, removed his chances of rescuing Afghans out of Afghanistan. Because they were so, in my opinion, so focused on bringing Zachary Young down, they didn't care about the Afghans. Not one bit. And depriving Zachary Young from his ability through corporate sponsors, getting people out, probably got people killed. That's CNN for you.
Evidence this morning. You reach out to Mr. Daniels, sir, do you not?
Yes.
And you say to him, James, I saw your post about Zachary Young and would be eager to know more about your interactions with him, correct?
Yes.
Eager again, sir, aren't you?
Yes, this is consistent with all the research I was doing on Mr. Young.
I agree. Can we scroll down? He says here, Alex, thanks for the conversation earlier. I just asked that you not use my name if this goes any further. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you respond at the bottom of the page, don't worry, nothing going in the report. Do you see that?
Yes.
Sir, Zach made that request too, did he not?
He made that request. I don't recall what Mr. Daniels told me. It might not have been relevant.
Sir, you did not give Mr. Young the option because you already decided that you were going to nail him. Isn't that correct?
No, I didn't know what was going to go into the piece until the last hours and days beforehand.
Corey, can you put up next exhibit 117, which is an evidence? Let's go to page 4. So this is a conversation between you and Katie Willows, correct?
Yes.
She's talking to you about Zachary Young, correct?
Yes, she had just made.
Says, LOL, he is trying to pull, I want you to promise you won't name me in any article as a condition for talking. Do you see that?
Yes, I did.
She says, sorry, my dude, correct?
Yes.
And your response at the bottom is, ha, that's really funny, isn't it?
Yes, that's my response.
Not, don't worry, it's not going in the report, correct?
No.
Yeah, as I see you in the chat discussing, not even Sarah Palin could get to discovery. Folks, when it comes to defamation cases, it is extraordinarily difficult to even get to discovery. And even with discovery, it is extraordinarily difficult to get to trial. Them even being in trial is such a, especially against a news agency who has who's all the protections of the First Amendment and freedom of press, and he still got to trial through discovery and everything. So when they say they didn't do this to nail him, well, they had zero evidence of him being a part of black market. Zero evidence he took money from Afghans. Zero. And they still put him in a segment, starting with exploited Afghans, victims of human trafficking, ending with exploited Afghan, victim of human trafficking, and they put him front center in that story with absolutely zero evidence Zachary Young did anything of the claims. I can't be neutral on this. I really can't. There's no way for me.
Thought it was funny when Mr. Young asked for the same courtesy?
Apparently at the time.
Corey, can we scroll up to page 3 for a minute? Because Mr. Marquard, at 3:14 that same day, you had already told Katie Willows, okay, eventually we will need to hit him hard with it, let him know that many texts that he sent to people with all his outrageous prices, and we plan to report both his name and what he said to people, including calling one American activist a spiteful bitch, so he's gonna be on CNN. You see that?
Yep.
And that's why you didn't give him the same courtesy, correct?
These are obviously selective parts of the broader conversation. My colleague Katie Willows had just made contact with Mr. Young, and we were trying to figure out how to best approach him so we could learn as much as we possibly could about what he was doing. At this point, I'm telling Ms. Lillis, that we are planning to report his name and what he said. And I would just note that when he did say this thing, spiteful B, about this woman who's an activist who works in Afghanistan and works with women and girls, just calls her a swear word. We did not include that in our reports.
It's November 3rd, sir.
Correct.
You didn't publish your story until November 11th.
8 days. So a lot changes between then and publication.
We'll see, right? So you were on a mission, were you not?
To tell a good story, to tell everything factually, and to tell as comprehensive a story as possible. That is a mission with every story that I do.
To expose and humiliate Zachary Young.
That is incorrect.
Let's jump back to your conversation with James Daniels. Corey, after that LinkedIn conversation completes, we need a limited production here of 108. After that LinkedIn conversation continues, you guys move to text messages. Do you recall that?
Sorry, between myself and?
Mr. Daniels, James Daniels.
Yes.
Do you have any idea? This is a journalist, folks. They have very high protection with sources. And this got it through? Holy hell. Holy hell. They got discovery about a reporter, a journalist, a news anchor, apparently he won awards for his work. And they got text messages between him and a source. Holy...
And Corey, can we have a limited production of PX 108? And these are your text messages with him that follow that LinkedIn conversation, correct?
Yes.
You talk about Zachary Young in those LinkedIn messages, do you not?
Yes.
Your Honor, plaintiffs offer exhibit 108 into evidence.
Objection. All right, plaintiff's 108 submitted.
Mr. Hagan, can you please publish the jury? Hey, Jim. Thank you, Corey. Who met with him in Vienna? Alex, I'll have to find the message. Let's scroll down a little bit. Keep going. Keep me in the loop on this, Alex. I'm definitely more prone to believe your take on the story. That is him being a real person and engaged in some shady business is highly possible. Let's go up a little bit. Original post I put up is getting shared. Let's go down. You say, oh, and he offers to put you in touch with anybody that talks to him about Zachary Young, correct?
Yes.
You say, okay, excellent. You ask him about a virus. He tells you, well, some attachment I need to click on. Let's go down. Keep going. Got a message from another person. Keep going. Bradstreet, Vienna. You say, good find. I've seen the Florida address, a couple numbers. 719 goes to Colorado number. Let's keep going. He's still active. May have just blocked me. Speak to this Figueroa guy. And then he tells you, I'd love to see this guy taken down, Alex. I appreciate you taking interest in it. Apparently, he's been active as recently as 3 hours ago. You see that?
I did.
Keep going, please, for me, Corey. He's still at it. I saw that one from a little while ago. We've been in touch with him, you say. He makes no apologies, right?
Yes.
He deserved what was coming to him, right?
No.
I agree. Wow, you actually found the guy, he tells you. Scroll down. Yeah, we did. Got his phone number, texted a bunch, didn't take my call. Do you think you'll have enough sooner than later to file a story? That's the plan next week. Great. I really want to see this guy get taken down. If I get anything new, I'll let you know, but it really seems like you've gotten to the heart of the matter. Nicely done. I really respect and appreciate what you're doing, right?
Yes, Ms. Friedman.
Keep going. On November 11th, he says, story coming out today, heard a rumor. You say, looking that way. Young's account appears to have disappeared. And he says to you, he's got to be feeling the heat well done, right?
Yes.
Keep scrolling, please, Corey. You've seen these messages. Something's redacted. You then send him the piece after it comes out, right?
Yes.
And he says, bravo, thank you, Alex, right?
Yes, he does.
So Ms. Kornetsky wasn't the only one you talked to who wanted to see Mr. Young get taken down, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, Corey. You can take that down. Sir, you pitched the story about Mr. Young internally to CNN too, didn't you?
As I do with all my stories, yes.
You sent two pitch emails around, an informal one and a formal one. We've looked at them briefly, right?
Yes.
Let's look at them a little bit closer. Corey, can you put up exhibit 81, please? And let's zoom into the pitch email. So the pitch is called Afghanistan Evacuation Price Gouge. In the opening paragraph, you say, an American activist showed me messages from a guy named Zachary Young who's charging $75,000 to get one vehicle from Kabul to Pakistan. And then, in the next paragraph, you included a separate paragraph where you said Young claims to be former CIA, but that you haven't been able to verify it yet, correct?
I say that They don't know who he is. I eventually verified something.
From the official spokesperson from the CIA, correct?
Yes.
She confirmed for you off the record that Zachary Young was former CIA, correct?
Had some kind of affiliation, had some kind of connection to the CIA. That's correct.
And that's common for the CIA to do. They call it a steer, right?
Yes.
You say at the end, is anyone digging into this kind of thing seems worth chasing, right?
Yes, I would just highlight, this is not a pitch. This is an email to a colleague of mine, a fellow reporter who covers the FBI and other issues. And I'd heard that he might be working on something similar. So here I am basically telling him what I'm working on.
I think it's just a miss. Corey, can you zoom out, please? So actually, Corey, can you?
Oh, look at the subject. Oh, hold on. Let's go back a few seconds. Look, subject, pitch. Ha.
Can you took the top email, which is a follow-up, but actually your original email goes to Mr. Levine, Ms. Mosley, and Mike Callahan, correct? I'm sorry, we put up the wrong email there. That's our fault.
That's an email from Adam Levine, correct?
Right, and your original email is going to him, and it says pitch, Afghan evacuation advice gouging, correct?
Correct. And I think that speaks to how broad the story was. And as you can see, it starts off by talking about regular people and not Mr. Young.
So this pitch email here, it names only Young as a potential bad actor, correct?
It names Mr. Young as an actor in this market. Yeah,
Only Young, correct?
that's correct. Well, I have the two other people who I'm not naming for their security reasons. I couldn't reveal their identities because they're being chased by the Taliban. If we had felt comfortable in a normal situation where people are not being hunted, I would have put their names in there as well. And I think, in the pitch process, what you're trying to do is help your editors imagine.
You absolute twat. You don't put names in there. You tell, I have 2 more sources on this. But you chose to name a person. This is so bad.
What the eventual story is going to look like. And by putting a name in there, you're essentially, giving an example and illustrating the bigger story that you're working on. So that's why his name is in there.
And he's the only name in there, correct?
Again, because of security reasons, I couldn't name the other 2 people.
But it's just a simple yes or no. He's the only name there, correct?
Correct.
Just like you're reporting? He's the only name there too?
I'd have to double check, but we couldn't reveal other people's names. I think you'd understand that it's very, very dangerous if we reveal that they spoke with us.
But you had no qualms in naming Zachary Young. Knowing that, should have known, that Zachary Young had people on the ground. He had connections on the ground. He had connections to people who worked, who you might have revealed through this segment, naming Zachary Young. You didn't give a flaming fuck about who you damaged, as long as you got to Zachary Young. Yeah, I'm neutrality reporting on this channel is now officially completely gone. Completely.
Thank you, Corey. You can take that down. 2 days later, you submit what I've been referring to as the formal pitch. Corey, let's put up Exhibit 88. This formal pitch is entitled Extortion of Desperate Afghans, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And like the informal pitch, the only operator you mentioned here is Young, correct?
Yes, he's the only one who's named here.
You tell your superiors that your plan would include talking to people who engaged with Young and contact him ourselves, correct?
Yes, who, again, we cannot name for security reasons.
So not only is Young those are the evacuees, right? The Afghans that you're not naming, correct?
The would-be evacuees who aren't able to get out. I mean, one man was in the United States, but he was trying to get his family out. But I didn't want to report their names because I didn't want to put a target on their backs.
Yeah, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the bad actors you're featuring, like Zachary Young. He's the only bad actor you're featuring, correct?
Well, I didn't describe him as a bad actor. He's the example that we're giving for the people who are participating in this market.
He's the only operator you mentioned in the piece, correct?
That's correct.
And not only is the only operator you mentioned, he's the only operator you named for further investigation, correct?
Yes.
Even though you got 2 other names.
Yes. So exactly 2 weeks before the story was published.
Pitch was well received by CNN, right?
It was approved.
Who is Adam Levine?
He is my boss. He's in charge of the Washington Bureau.
Is he sitting here with us today?
He's sitting with us today.
Can you put up Exhibit 81? What is his title?
I believe it is Senior Vice President for Washington Editorial.
Top press.
Yes.
Top press. Okay. So Mr. Levine responds to your pitch email. He says, it's a good story if you have these examples. Do you see that?
Yes.
So you needed Young as an example, did you not?
He was a good example of what we were talking about.
You needed him, right?
Yes.
The next day, you wrote Mr. Callahan. He's your boss, right?
He's my direct manager, yes.
Court, can you put up Exhibit 82, please? And you tell him at 12:07 that you are continuing to dig on the pitch I sent last night, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And Mr. Callahan responds to you. He says, it's a good one. I will remind Adam, that's Mr. Levine, to bring it up with Virginia Mosley, more top brass at CNN,
Correct.
in their meetings, right?
Yes.
And then later that evening, he says to you, can we find more info on this Young guy first, right?
Yes.
So you've now been told by 2 senior CNN employees that you should continue to pursue Zachary Young, correct?
Well, I think what Mr. Levine was saying was find examples of all of these things, which is what I did. I think you could say that in the piece there are 3 examples. And that's what Mr. Levine, I believe, was saying, and that's what we did. And Mr. Callahan here is saying that we need more information on Mr. Young. And that's what I was doing. I was digging into to try to find whatever I could.
Following instructions of the superiors, right?
Yes, but this is just good reporting. It's good research. That's the normal course of things.
Court, can you put up Exhibit 88? After you submit your formal pitch, Mr. Levine responds. He says, let's get these into the pitch pool. Both are good. There was another pitch in the pitch, in the email, right?
There was, yeah.
You respond to Mr. Levine's email just 9 minutes later. You say, terrific, right?
Yes.
And then you provide him with an update on your pursuit of Zachary Young, do you not?
Yes, it shows that my reporting is ongoing.
You say, just talking to another woman in Kabul, was in touch with the Young guy and just stopped answering her when she didn't have a sponsor to pay the bills, correct?
Yes, more evidence of this pattern.
Right. Then on November 1st, you're told that CNN has approved your pitch.
On which day?
November 1st.
Okay.
Not a member.
So everybody knew on CNN that Mr. Young only focused on Afghans with sponsors, with companies, organizations, non-profits who could foot the bill, not exploiting individuals. They all knew. They all knew, or should have known.
Read us Exhibit 101 for me, please. It's a text conversation on Slack between you and your direct manager, Mr. Callahan. He opens, he says, Bass is Michael Bass, right?
Yes.
Michael Bass was the most senior person through whom all the TV pitches went, right?
Correct.
And so he tells you Bass greenlit Afghan money, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So your pitch has been approved, correct?
Yes.
You respond with excellent, right?
Yes.
With an exclamation point, correct?
Yes.
You were eager to tell the story, weren't you?
I was glad that my pitch has been approved.
Excuse me. Do you remember sitting for deposition in this case, sir?
Yes, I do.
And at that deposition, you swore to tell the truth.
Yes.
And can you please go to page 176 of volume 2? And let's go to lines 7 through 11.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
I have no objection.
At that deposition, I asked you the following questions. You gave the following answers. And you respond back with an excellent and an exclamation point. Sir, you were eager to tell the story, right? Answer, I was. The reporting, as you know, was already underway for several days.
That's all true.
Eager again.
If I'm pitching a story, I'm eager to tell that story.
You then provide Mr. Callahan with some updates on Mr. Young, correct? First, that's Tammy Thorpe, the official spokesperson for the CIA, right?
Yes.
Just basically told me that dude was former CIA, correct?
That's correct.
And then you say at 6:32, I have 2 main characters I want to get on tape. Then I want to try to find this Young character, right?
Yes, and that speaks to the fact that this was a broader story that was not about Mr. Young in particular.
That's because you needed a bad guy for your scandal story, Mr. Marquard. Isn't that true?
No, that's not true.
You hated him, did you not?
No, that's not true.
Sir, you never actually spoke on the phone to Zachary Young, correct?
We attempted to. We wanted to. We asked him repeatedly to get on the phone.
But you never did, and you went to press anyways, right?
Absolutely, yes. We tried to get him on the phone, but we weren't able to.
You received 3, you, Mr. Marquard, received 3 text messages from Zachary Young, correct?
I don't know the exact number.
We'll go through them. For now, accept my representation.
Fair.
And that was the only direct communication you had with him, correct?
That's correct, because he didn't pick up my phone call.
Now, the first text message you got from Zachary Young was on November 11th, right?
That's correct.
The day the story ran, right?
Yes.
Court, can you put up Exhibit 103, please? And we're looking at your Slack messages between yourself and an individual at CNN called Matthew Phillips, right?
That's right.
He's a digital editor.
He is.
This is November 1st.
Right, so early in the process, about 10 days, exactly 10 days from publication.
At this whole point, no one at CNN had communicated with Mr. Young directly, correct?
I believe that's correct. I believe he started engaging with Katie Bowen III. So that's right. At this point, I had seen his communication with Joe Kornetsky and others.
It's 7:30 p.m. It's UTC time, so it's wrong, but
Exactly.
It's -5, I think it is, but 7:30 is the time.
During the workday, in the afternoon.
Can you put a side-by-side, I'm sorry, Corey, of the previous exhibit we were looking at? That would be exhibit.
Did you see what it said? Let's go back a few seconds. Text from Alex Marquad. November 1st, 2021, 7:30 p.m. We gonna nail Zachary Young MFer. Yeah, that's intent. They ignored every piece of information that told them that Zachary Young did not exploit, did not do the black market thing, just to nail him. That's the intent.
Corey, of the previous exhibit we were looking at, that would be exhibit 101. So these are both in UTC time, so we don't have to do the mathematics of converting them, okay? So, and Corey, can you bring up Bass Greenlit Afghan money? That's at 6:32, right?
Yes.
All right, and then can you bring up the same time period, an hour later at 7:30, and Mr. Marquard's messages with Mr. Calais, Mr. Phillips? So just 1 hour after you find out that CNN has greenlit your Afghan money post, you tell Phillips, "We gonna nail the Zachary Young motherfucker," don't you?
I see that, yes.
And he responds with, "Gonna hold you to that one, cowboy." Correct?
Yes, correct.
Scroll down for me a little bit, please. You say, or maybe not, maybe he just slips away. We shall see. Let's keep going, please, Corey. He says, "We shall." But he has faith in you. You're gonna nail him, right?
I think Mr. Phillips generally has faith that I'm going to do a good job.
That's going to be good, right?
It's going to be a good story.
You say, "I hope." You hope to nail him, don't you?
No, I hope to tell the story, absolutely. And as you can see, it's about the Afghan money. What I was talking about with Mr. Phillips, he was helping me with some research, and I was trying to find out where Mr. Young was based. And that exchange is about getting in touch with our in-house researchers who could help me with that.
So let me get this straight, sir. No one from CNN had communicated with Zachary Young, correct? As of this date.
As of November 1st, no, but I had seen other communications.
You had not communicated with Zachary Young as of this date.
Not until 10 days later.
You nonetheless decided he was a motherfucker.
From what I had seen in his communications with a lot of people, including Ms. Kornetsky, I could tell that there were some unsavory traits, shall we say. He was telling a woman he didn't know that she was spiteful bee. He told her to F off. He told someone else that had a person they were trying to get out of the country to run for the border and see how far they get. I knew he had a shifting story on his actual role with the CIA. I saw that he was cutting people off as soon as he found out that they couldn't afford to pay the money. So I was certainly questioning his behavior, and that's what that comment was in reference to.
And you decided you were going to nail him.
That's shorthand for highlighting, exposing what he was doing, his activities, and what others like him were doing.
Have you heard the expression "nail him to the cross"?
Yes, I have.
You were going to nail him to the cross?
No, I didn't say that.
In fact, you did nail him, didn't you?
No, I didn't. At the end of the day, our report said nothing about him doing anything illegal. It didn't say anything beyond what we had learned about him and what he himself had told us. Eventually, we did talk to him, and we used his own words in our report. Everything that was in the report was completely factual.
Your Honor, I see it's 10:15, so this is a good time for us to take our morning break, if it's okay with the court.
All right, go ahead and take your notepads, the folders.
Here now, what Alex Marquard says is factually correct. That's not the issue here. The issue is they put him in a segment. I keep repeating this because they try to get away with, well, those 30 seconds, we only describe what he did. Yeah, but you put him in a segment called Black Market. You started with 3 minutes of human trafficking victims. You put his face front and center. Ended with victims of human trafficking. This in my personal opinion, was them nailing Mr. Young, ruining him. Because in a discussion with a woman, he called her a spiteful bee. That's the only thing he actually did wrong here. So, yeah. And again, they had names. They were given names of people who actually exploited Afghans, who actually did the black market thing, who actually was human traffickers. They ignored those people just to get to Zachary Young. There's no saving this. The only thing